Okay, so welcome to the second of three videos on the endocrine system. Today, in this video, we're going to start by going through a list of the various glands that produce hormones, important hormones. Now, I just want to stress that this list is first of all, doesn't include all of the endocrine glands in the body, and it also doesn't include all of the hormones that all of those glands produce. However, it is a general overview of some of the most important hormones that are produced by the largest and most important of the endocrine glands. So we'll start with the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, if you recall from the previous video, is an endocrine gland that's located at the base of the brain. Okay, hypo means below. Thalamus is actually a part of the brain. So hypothalamus means just below that part of the brain. Its major function is to help maintain homeostasis by influencing the autonomic nervous system. Remember, the autonomic nervous system is the one that governs things that you don't really think about, like heartbeat, like your body temperature, water balance through your kidneys. And it also helps to control some of the other glandular secretions, specifically the ones that are important and done by the pituitary gland. Okay, so it does all four of these things. Maintains the homeostatic environment, regulates the internal environment, and controls other glandular secretions. Now, that brings us to the pituitary gland. Now, the pituitary gland hangs directly below the hypothalamus, and it's composed of two separate parts. The posterior part, the one toward the back of your head, secretes two hormones that are important for our discussion today. First, I'm sorry, it doesn't produce, but it stores two hormones that are important. The first is what we call ADH, or antidiuretic hormone. This is the hormone that helps to regulate water balance by allowing water to be reabsorbed into the bloodstream, essentially in the loop of the nephron and in the convoluted tubules in the kidneys. So ADH is if you your ADH keeps water in the body. Now, interestingly enough, alcohol inhibits ADH. And so if you drink too much, that makes you lose your ADH work, and you will lose a great deal of water. And so therefore, that's why people who drink a lot of alcohol tend to be peeing a lot while they're drinking. And once you quote unquote break the seal, all bets are off. The second hormone that's important here is oxytocin. And this is the one that causes uterine contractions during childbirth. And it also allows milk to be released while a new mother is nursing. Okay, so ADH and oxytocin. Now, the front part of the pituitary gland is called the anterior pituitary gland, and it is controlled by hypothalamic releasing and hypothalamic inhibiting hormones. Now, the important hormones, and there's a lot of them here, but the important hormones produced by the anterior pituitary are the first one is TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. Can you imagine what that does? It stimulates the thyroid, okay? We'll get to the thyroid in a little while. It also produces adrenocorticotropic hormones, or ACTH, and this stimulates the adrenal glands to produce cortisol. Now, cortisol, we'll get to that when we get to the adrenal glands, but essentially it's an anti-inflammatory. It produces gonadotropic hormones, which stimulate the gonads, your testes or ovaries, depending upon your gender, to produce sex cells, sperm or eggs, and the hormones that are associated with your gender. Prolactin is the fourth one, or PRL, and in women, this stimulates the mammary glands to develop during puberty and to produce milk after childbirth. Let's see. Number 5 is the melanocyte stimulating hormone, or MSH, and this causes your skin cells to produce melanin to give you a darker skin tone. Um, Melanocytes, remember, are specific skin cells that produce the pigment melanin, and these cells are influenced by the anterior pituitary gland. And finally, and probably the most important hormone that we'll talk about today in terms of the anterior pituitary is growth hormone, or GH. And this is a hormone that produces skeletal and muscle growth in your body. So, under normal conditions, you produce a good amount of GH during childhood because that's when you're growing. But that amount is severely reduced once you've reached your adult stature. However, there can be some issues. Now, there are 2 examples on this page. The first is the NBA player on the left-hand side. He's the shorter guy, and I can't remember his name for the love of for all I can figure. But he's there playing against, and that looks like Michael Jordan, although he's not wearing 23, so I'm not sure. Um, in any event, the guy on the right-hand side of that picture had too little growth hormone as a child, and he's got a form of dwarfism, which is which causes his short stature. Now, this guy was obviously a good enough basketball player to get into the NBA and stay there, so he must have been pretty talented. The picture on the right-hand side of the screen shows 2 examples. First is a guy and I don't know his name, but he's a pituitary giant, very, very tall. This guy is 7 or 8 feet tall. But the person who is standing underneath him is actually a pituitary dwarf. All right, and so 2 examples of too much growth hormone, too little growth hormone during childhood. Now, there can also be problems with growth hormone if a person continues to produce too much of it once they've reached adulthood. All right, these are 4 pictures of the same person all throughout life, from age 9 all the way up through age 52. And essentially, her growth hormone levels never went down after she reached adulthood. And so you can see, at age 9, cute little girl. Age 16, she's developing into a beautiful young woman. But by age 33, because of the excess growth hormone, you can see a widening of her features, a thickening of her brow. And you can definitely see the changes, especially between the second and third pictures here. And by age 52, you end up, or she ended up looking like she does in that picture on the right-hand side, very broad facial features and very thick appendages, fingers and arms and that sort of thing. That leads us to the 4th gland, which is the thyroid gland. Now, the thyroid is a large gland located just beneath your voice box, so right about here. And it is a gland that produces a couple of hormones, including thyroid hormone, TH. And this is exceptionally important in regulating your metabolism. You've heard about people who have, slow metabolisms or fast metabolisms. And if that's the case, it may very well be that they have issues with the amounts of thyroid hormone that's being produced by their thyroid glands. And so TH regulates metabolism. The thyroid hormones require iodine in order to produce the hormones that they need. And so it turns out that in Europe and Asia and even Africa, there's plenty of iodine in the soil. And so the foods that people there eat have enough iodine for the thyroid hormones to work. In the Western Hemisphere, there's not as much iodine in the soil. And so we supplement the amount of iodine in our diets by iodizing our salt. This started, I believe it was the Roosevelt administration during the Great Depression, where we started to iodize salts to make sure that people had enough in their diet. The second hormone that the thyroid gland produces is calcitonin. All right, this one here. And that helps to lower blood calcium levels by storing it inside the bones. Okay, so it's part of the homeostatic mechanism that maintains your blood calcium levels. All right, and remember, blood calcium is important for muscle contraction and nervous signaling, so you want to keep that level correct. Now, what happens if you have thyroid hormone, TH, abnormalities? All right, well, a couple of examples are shown in this picture. On the left-hand side, you see a swelling of the thyroid called a goiter. And this is something that occurs under conditions where the thyroid hormones are being produced at irregular levels, and the thyroid begins to swell. You can have what's called congenital hypothyroidism, when the thyroid is not producing thyroid hormone at proper levels during fetal development and just after birth. This is called congenital hypothyroidism. And you can see that the baby in this picture has very distinct features: a swollen tongue, a flat, broad face. It looks almost like a Down syndrome baby, although that's not the case here. The last one on the right-hand side is what we call an exophthalmic goiter. And what this does is it causes a swelling of the eye. Look at this eye here compared to the eye on the left side of the screen. And you can see that this is a very swollen eye. It's being pushed out literally by the goiter. Last but not least for this particular video is gland number 5, the parathyroid glands. These are teeny tiny glands that are embedded inside the surface of the thyroid gland, and they produce a hormone called the parathyroid hormone, or PTH. And this works alongside calcitonin. But rather than decrease blood calcium levels, this one increases blood calcium levels by promoting bone losing the bones. So the calcium level in the blood will increase because we're removing this from the bones. Parathyroid hormone can be a cause of osteoporosis. All right, and so we counteract that with synthetic calcitonin. All right, so that brings us, I believe, to the end of this video. So stay tuned for the third.